Yeah, so here's what I see done wrong about 100% of the time. And I don't even mean that with hyperbole. Almost every time.
I'm Ela Thier of the Independent Film School, here with producer Nicholas Tabarrok talking about the do's and don'ts of pitching.
Hello, good morning.
Hello. So I'm Ela Thier, and I'm here with Nicholas Tabarrok, who is currently producing a feature film that I'll be directing, 109 Billion Followers. So we've gotten to work together for a while. And it's been such a pleasure and such a tremendous learning experience for me that I wanted to share you with my community.
Well, I'm honored and flattered, and it's been a great experience for me as well. And the fun part for that film is yet to come.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's a nice thought. So Nicholas, to speak to any of our listeners here, I do encourage you to look him up. He has been at this for a very long time and has produced over 30 feature films. Very prolific and accomplished producer, and his work is really beautiful. I think the way I would describe your work, Nicholas, is that you know how to find that nexus of work that is marketable and also meaningful and that has soul to it, and the two
Well,
together is the sweet spot, which what makes you a really great producer.
well, it's very, very kind words, and it's actually very encouraging and satisfying to hear you say that, because you've never said that before. But that's very deliberate, and that's exactly what I've tried to do. The way I said the same thing, put slightly differently. I've always sort of said, if art films, like the really, really idiosyncratic art films are over here, and the real like paint by numbers Steven Seagal action films are here. I'm trying to do these that have some artistry to them, but also have some like real entertainment factor value to them. And that's sort of where I'm trying to then use the word nexus, which I've never used before, but that's a great word. Yeah.
Yeah. No, what I like about your work, and why I'm so lucky to work with you, is it's not about compromising
Right.
artistic integrity or compromising marketability. It's knowing where they meet, um, and bringing both. So with that in mind,
Yeah.
Nicholas is here to teach me and the rest of us about pitching. And we'll start by talking about the formal pitch. You're coming into a producer's office, you have about a half an hour, you're talking about a project. We're going to get Nicholas's instructions, recommendations to conduct that meeting. And then we'll end off this call with tips on the elevator pitch. You have a minute with someone, it's like a pitch expo, or you see someone for a few minutes at a networking event, and you want to pique their interest in a minute or so. So let's start with the formal pitch.
Yeah.
Someone is walking into your office. I'm handing it over to you.
Perfect. So the most important lesson is don't be 90 minutes late. So it's a bit of an
We're
inside
9
joke.
minutes late.
Exactly. Bit of an inside joke. I was late for the Zoom this morning, so that was an inside joke. So, but also don't be late. Okay. So pitching is so important because that's the moment at which the person or people you are pitching to are really going to make up their mind. Am I even going to read the script? Am I even going to take this any further? Because everyone's time is valuable, and everybody has more scripts than they can possibly read. I turn down scripts every week, and I'm low on the totem pole. If you're pitching HBO, you're pitching Netflix, or an actor or an agent, the volume of material they have, it's not that I was about to say not that they're rude or dismissive. Some of them are. But even the good ones can't possibly read all the material that is sent to them. So hence the weight and importance of pitching matters so much, because they can say, okay, you know what? That sounded interesting. I'm going to give up 90 minutes of my weekend in order to read. So that's just sort of setting up why the pitch is so important. And I think we practice and rehearse our pitches a lot. So like if we're talking about the formal one, you're not sort of like bump into somebody, oh, I have a minute of their time, but it's like a formalized Thursday at 4, come and meet with us. We really work on those because what you want the pitch to feel, it sounds contradictory, but what you want the pitch to be is really, well rehearsed. Like every word you speak, and often it's more than one of you because I will go in with a writer or I'll go in with a director. So often it's sort of a team, you know, 2, maybe 3 if there's 2 writers. But I've found in my experience as a producer that I'm usually pitching with someone. So it could be 2 or 3 of us. But even if you're alone, you want every word to be planned and rehearsed and not ad hoc, but you don't want it to sound that way. You want it to feel like it's just stream of consciousness talking, because the 2 worst things you can do is not be prepared and kind of rambling, because you know a pitch that comes in, and I pitch a lot, but I also hear a lot of pitches. So I'm sort of in the, you know, producers are in the middle, right? We get pitches to us, but we're also pitching to others. So I hear a lot of pitches, and it's the rambling, incoherent kind of like if you can't encapsulate your story clearly, and it's not making sense to me hearing it, then how am I ever gonna, you know, or the audience is ever gonna understand? So you have to be really clear about it. But then the second worst pitch is robotic, is the one that it sounds so, you know, standing in front of a mirror with a stopwatch, and you're like, dear Mr. Producer, my story is about, and it just sounds flat and robotic. So it should feel like you're just having a conversation, you know? And again, it's different for what we'll call the elevator pitch, when it's you just have a minute of someone's time. But when you have a scheduled pitch, this is going to sound very inconsequential and kind of tangential, but I really think it's important. Don't launch right into it. You don't just sit down in the couch. So what I'm here to tell you, like, you want it to feel like you're having a conversation and you're being respectful of their time, but you also say, I'll make up something silly, but you know, gosh, it's so hot out there. I can't believe it's 80 degrees in October. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, chit chat. And yes, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for hearing my pitch. This is what I'm here to talk to you about. Like, work into it like it's a conversation. You don't want people to feel like it's mechanical. You don't want it to feel like, you want it to feel conversation. Okay, so that's that. So then what you want to cover in the pitch is before you start talking about your story, is what kind of movie or television series is it? Like, what is it? What's the genre and the audience that it's intended for? There are these really fun things on YouTube. You can see the one that I saw recently, which is so clever, is The Shining, you know, one of the great horror movies of all time. And it's like, you should look it up afterwards. I'm encouraging your students to. And the reason why I'm going off on this tangent is because it has a purpose. Is like The Shining. What if The Shining was a rom-com? And people have taken The Shining and re-pitched it with music, and it's really clever and fun. And the reason why I say that is that any movie, any story, sorry, can come in a different light, right? So The Shining, it's a young couple with a small child. They go to look after this huge hotel and all that. That could be a rom-com. Like their marriage is falling apart and they have this huge idea. You know? So that movie, that premise could come different ways. So before you start talking about your story, you want the recipient to understand, oh, it's this kind of movie. So the old kind of cheesy trope about Hollywood pitching is it's Jaws meets this, right? You watch Entourage, you watch movies about movies, and it's always, you know, like a desperate kind of producer saying, it's Star Wars meets Jaws, you know? And even though the meets thing is sort of like a bit of a cliche, there's actually some truth to that. You do want when I say audience, I mean the person sitting across the couch from you. I'm not yet talking about the viewing audience. You want the recipient of your pitch to understand what kind of movie it is. So if I can, I'll just briefly talk about your movie, Ela. You go to pitch 109 billion followers and you say it's a magical realism dramedy, similar to, you know, tonally similar to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So then, oh, immediately I understand kind of what kind of movie it's about. So that is important. So to your students, find a comp, find a comparable movie that it is like before you start telling your story. So, okay, it's similar to this. So I understand it's a horror movie. It's a light rom-com. It's a really serious drama. So then as you're telling your story, they're already listening to through that lens. And then the other thing is similar to that,
You know,
but
if I'm looking away, it's because I'm taking notes. So
okay,
I
all
create a
right.
cheat sheet. Yes.
Okay,
Our
yeah.
conversation. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, please interrupt me and ask questions or jump in if I you want to dig down deeper in a point or you want to clarify something.
Just as a point of clarification for people listening, a writer or filmmaker might come to you to pitch, but then the reason that you would pitch is because you're pitching to financiers or studios or Netflix. So that's why you're on both ends of it.
Exactly.
Just for
Exactly.
clarification. Yeah.
Exactly right. That's right. So
Okay.
yeah, somebody comes to me, am I going to take it on and help package it, do various things with it, and then ultimately I'll take it to finance. And I pitch agents all the time as well. So I'm going to take on a project and I'm on the agent to encourage them to get it to their client, right? Like, is it worth their client reading it? This is, yeah. I mean, I literally did it yesterday, so I'm trying to think of a real life example. So I have this, just because you asked the question, I'll go to a real life example. I pitched an agent at WME yesterday about an action film that I'm putting together. And again, as you so kindly said off the top, it's an action film, but with some real smarts and coolness to it. It's not like a dumbed down action movie. And I was saying to the agent, my pitch to the agent about what kind of movie it was did you see Bob Odenkirk in Nobody, where he was playing completely against type, and we have this character who I've always seen as a comedic guy, and of course in Breaking Bad he played a very schlubby guy, and all of a sudden becomes an action hero. What I'm pitching to your client is very similar, that it's sort of he switches halfway through the movie, so that allows an actor to play two entirely different roles in the same movie. Your client, I'm not going to say his name because if we don't get it, I don't want to put it out there.
Yeah.
Your client has that amazing ability to play both vulnerable and tough in the same movie. So I'm trying to, be flattering to the client, tell them why it's worth their consideration, tell them why they're well suited to it. So the reason why I tell that story is your students who are writers and directors may not be in exactly that position, but they probably will be in a very similar position. So if you're trying to get an actor interested, why should the actor do your film? Something that's good for their career, that's flattering to them, that gives them a chance to stretch, that shows them in a different light, that kind of thing. Slight tangent. So coming back, who is the audience for it? Is this for teen female teens? Is it the Taylor Swift, although she has a pretty massive audience, but is it for Taylor Swift fans? Is it for, if it's a serious, I think the film that you and I met over was a film I made called Irina's Vow, which is a true story Holocaust movie. That's not for kids. It's not a 4-quadrant movie. Don't pretend it is. Be realistic about your audience. So I made this very serious, very weighty World War II drama. When I pitched that, I'm not saying it's 4-quadrant, and I'll briefly talk about quadrants in case that's an unfamiliar phrase. In very big blocks, the audience is divided into 4 quadrants. The 2 quadrants, sort of left and right, being male and female, and then above 25, below 25. So Pixar movies famously are very, very successful because they're 4-quadrant movies. Men, women, older, younger. They appeal to everyone. But be realistic about it. And to be a 2-quadrant or single quadrant movie isn't a bad thing. They can be massively successful. Paw Patrol, well, I guess that's 2-quadrant. Paw Patrol is definitely for young kids, but it's, we should all be so lucky to make something like that. I'm jumping around a bit, sorry, but because as you ask questions and as I think of things, we're covering a lot of topics.
Yeah, that's good.
So off the top, before you've even started talking about what your specific story is, your recipient knows, I know what kind of movie it is, and now I know who the audience is for. That's immensely helpful because as you're telling the story, they're hearing it through a lens of what kind of movie it is. Then as you start talking the story, what in television, there's a famous quote that I heard decades ago that I really love. Television is about who, film is about what. So if you're pitching television, most of your time and emphasis is on character. Who is it about? Because you're asking the audience, and now I'm using the word audience to mean the ultimate viewing audience sitting at home, to sit with these people, hopefully for years, at least for months and hopefully for years. So if you're pitching Breaking Bad, you don't spend your time and then the cop does this and then he loses the drugs over here, then he meets the guy over here. The plot is less important. What you're pitching is Walter White. This is a chemistry teacher who's brilliant, who missed his chance, blah, blah, blah. So if it's television, you're pitching who these characters are. In film, of course, the characters matter and you can have deeply thought out three-dimensional characters, but you're pitching plot. You're pitching, here's what's happening. Dave is going to, and you're pitching the plot. And it's, you want to walk a fine line between not pedantically every moment, every beat, because eyes are going to glaze over. It's not a podcast. You're not telling, I was great friends with Bob Saget, and we were really good friends. And we made 2 films together, and we developed a few others. And his joke was when we made this film, we go and pitch it together, and we'd get into the room, and he'd say, "Okay, thank you for your time. Now I'm going to read you the script." And he'd sort of start, and it was
Well, to your point, the point of a pitch is not to get someone to agree to finance a film or to produce a film. It's to get them to read the script. And
exactly
then
right.
if the script does the job, then it's on the script to do that part.
Exactly
Pitch
right.
is to get them
Exactly
to
right.
read it. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That you want them to get it to you. You're many steps away from here's $5 million. This is the first toe in the door to get them to even consider it, read it. You could, in some cases, not even, is this worth me reading? Is this worth asking my junior executive to read? Is it worth me putting on their plate to sort of get to type thing? So, the Bob Saget story, meaning point being, don't be pedantic about every beat and moment that happens. I've had those pitches and I'm just sitting there, when is this going to end? And I'm trying to be polite, but at the same time, you don't want to breeze it over. You want to be, and it's about a guy who wins the war. You've got to give a bit more there. Well, why is that interesting? Because what are the main beats? What is your hero, your protagonist, they're up against? What is the challenge, and how do they succeed in the end? And the other thing that's interesting, a lot of mistakes about pitches are they're not cliffhangers. You don't what I had a pitch, I was shocked that I was, somebody's telling the pitch and sort of, the story, and so well, so what happens? I asked, because they sort of left. They said, so what happens at the end? And the guy said to me, well, you're gonna have to read it to find out. I was like, wow, you so misunderstand what's going on here. You don't get, you're not a carnival barker. Your job isn't come inside the tent to figure out what's going on. Your job is to tell them what's inside the tent, so it's worth them to pay for the circus. I'm stretching the metaphor,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so your pitch isn't ending in a cliffhanger. Your pitch isn't ending, and then you got to see what happens next. You are prepared. You should be. It's not. Here's another way to put it. Your pitch isn't the trailer to the movie. Your pitch isn't, oh, that's really exciting. I have to know what happens. Wow. How is Iron Man going to get out of that one? It's your pitch is, I'm telling you the story beginning to end so that you determine if that's something interesting to you.
I'm gonna throw in here just
Please.
little pro tip in my
Yeah.
experiences to your point here. that I make sure that a pitch sounds complete,
Yes,
but I leave them with surprises in the script. So
perfect.
they feel satisfied in the pitch, they're interested in the script, but then once they read the script, it surprises them beyond what I gave in the pitch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's a perfect way of putting it. That don't tell them everything, have them learn and read and something new that you didn't cover in the pitch, but also not misleading as, oh, I didn't know that was about. Exactly. That's exactly right. Um, and point of what just happened now, also in your pitch, coming back to what I said at the beginning, it's not like a rehearsing in front of a mirror with the stopwatch. The perfect pitch, there is conversation. The perfect pitch is not interruptions, but conversation, a question back and forth and so forth. In fact, again, more in television because you're covering so much of it, but we always in our pitches stop at sort of 2/3 in and say, now I want to tell you about X, whatever sort of report you haven't got to yet. But before I do so, any questions or any comments about what I've said so far? Because you don't want to be overwhelmed by, you don't want the audience sort of, well, you said something 10 minutes ago, but now you've so far past it, I kind of forgot what that was, or I didn't really understand something, or I was confused by something you said a minute ago, but now we're way off on something else. So we'll sort of talk, again, character, tone, theme, and I want to tell you what the pilot episode is about, but before doing so, any questions would have told you so far. So if it's a feature pitch, you talk about the comp, what it's like, who the audience is. But before I tell you X, anything you want to ask me thus far. And we also say off the top of the pitch, because you do want your audience to feel engaged and they're part of it. We always say, and by the way, interrupt me anytime. If I ever say anything, please jump in with a question or two. You want it to, the more of a two-way street it is, the better, because then they're engaged. They're not just passive, you don't want to be passive about it. I just had something in my head. Let me try to catch what I was going to say about. I've lost it, but it'll come back to me, no doubt.
Back.
Um, um,
It's funny, I
so
just had something in my head that ran off.
okay, yeah,
We're
yeah.
having a moment.
Exactly, exactly. It was right on the topic of sort of talking about questions and engaging them.
So I was thinking that you want to be so well rehearsed in the pitch that you can absorb interruptions, conversations, engage, and not be thrown off tracks in your pitch because you're just so well rehearsed
Exactly,
in what you'll
exactly.
communicate. Yeah.
I know I'm slightly belaboring the point, but not so well that when someone does jump in a question, you robotically go back to like break it up a little bit and feel
Yes.
and have, if the river's going this way and there's something, you hit a rock, be prepared for the river to go that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that thought will pop back in my head. But by the end of the pitch, what the recipient should know is the type of movie it is, who it's for, what the main protagonist and antagonist are, and the general story, sort of the beginning, middle, end. Not every twist and turn, not everything new about it, but everything that generally happens to it. The other thing is comps are two-way streets because, well, they're essential. So when you don't have never not have a comp. Like what I'm about to say is not, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do it. Always, always, always have a comp. They're invaluable because they immediately place your film in a type of movie that they know how to digest the information. But
And
what I
just
want
to
to
clarify, a comp is a film that's similar to yours tonally and that's been successful.
correct. Comp short for comparative. That's what comp
Yes.
means. Comparative movie that
A
is
comparative show if you're pitching
or
a
exactly.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I remember now where at that lost thought I had. You also though have to distinguish what yours is different and new, right? So, I didn't rehearse this, so I'm going to do a really clumsy one. Our show is a lot like Breaking Bad in that it's about an anti-hero who starts out with good intentions, but by the end of the season 5, he's become as bad a criminal as the person that he was up against. This is a show I'm inventing on the spot. So Breaking Bad is a great comp. Well, but you also want to say, but where we're different is, and I don't know, I didn't plan this, so I'm inventing it, but have a reason or thing why you're not just trying to copy Breaking Bad, right? So same thing, you know, in a feature film, you know, my film is similar. What was a great film of last year? What won the Oscar last year? Do you remember? It was terrible.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
What won the Oscar last year?
what,
I remember, oh gosh.
I know this is bad. What was the name of the Emma Stone movie where she's sort of a built human
Poor
being?
Things.
Poor Things. Okay. My film is similar to Poor Things, about it's a Frankenstein story, but yet how is it different? How are you not just trying to copy somebody
Right.
else's movie?
So my Breaking Bad is a housewife with 3 children who's, you know, such a good mother and wife, and she becomes the, you know,
The local, you know,
the
she
media mogul who brings the fascism to our state.
exactly, that's right. So it's similar to Breaking Bad in that she starts out as a middle class, ends up in this terrible place. But where we're different is she's not selling meth; she is selling a political agenda that is harmful, just as harmful as meth. It's great. Let's come up with a show together. How does this go? Let's take it to HBO. Yeah, great example. Something else about comps. Here's a huge mistake that I see really often, that I do this, and I guarantee you everyone does this. Everyone who's receiving the pitch kind of roll their eyes and they find it immediately dismissive. Don't make financial projections that are ridiculous based on the 1 in a million film that broke out and did crazy numbers. You know,
It's a rookie move. You sound amateurish when you do that.
total rookie move, you know. And again, I've had this come to me so many times. You know, big fat Greek wedding cost $3 million and did 250 million. My film will do the same, you know, and even if it's not as silly as overt as that, like, don't put those in, like, let me say it this way. Big Fat Greek Wedding is a great comp if you have a rom-com about cultural, you know, coming together. You know, what's the word I'm looking for? Cultural sort of, you know, collisions. You know, my film is similar to Big Fat Greek Wedding, yet it's about a Nigerian woman who meets a Hasidic Jewish man, and they fall in love. That's interesting. That's fun, right? I see the Greek wedding conflict there and how fun those two families can get along. But don't say, and I'm going to make it on a budget of $3 million, and we expect it to sell for $250 million in box office. Don't make a financial projection based on your comp, only a tonal one.
Okay, so I have 2 questions,
Please.
but it can wait till you're done.
No, this is the perfect time. And
Okay.
this is good for your students to see what interrupted questions, how to roll with them.
Interrupting cow moo. So one thing that I always bring to pitches is, and talk to people about, is like, why are you the person? And I
Oh,
don't know if that's
that's
specific.
exactly, you're going to think I'm inventing this. That's exactly the thought I had that I lost a few
That was
minutes.
the missing piece.
That's
Because I was just
exactly the
thinking
thought.
that, you know, the writer is a
Perfect. I'm
Nigerian
so glad you
woman
said
and
that.
her best friend is this Hasidic man, and she's, you
Yeah.
know, became part of his family, and, you know, yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question, because that is exactly the thing that was in my head, that the thought I lost is why. And this is less from if your students are producers taking other people's materials. It's more if it comes from the writer, from the director. Why me? Why am I the right person?
It's a
It's a
creative
great
statement.
question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, the first thing I'll say is, there won't always be a reason, sometimes a writer is going to come up with something that is purely out of their imagination and fantasy. And that's perfectly acceptable. That can be great. Why was George Lucas the right person to write Star Wars? Maybe there's no real reason. It just occurred to him. And of course, thank God he did, $100 billion later. But if it's again, taking the movie that we first met over, Irina's Vow, the writer of that movie is a true story of a real woman, knew Irina. They were great friends for 10 or 15 years. So I was pitching on his behalf in that particular case, but I'd say, and Dan knew Irina, and they spent 10 years. They were great friends, and he knew all her stories, and there's no better person to tell her story than him,
Mm.
So, and to, your example, this story, even if it's a light rom-com, but
Mhm.
when my mother told me about how she met my dad, I thought, oh my God, this deserves to be a movie. And I sat
Mhm.
down with my mother and I heard hours and hours of her stories, and this is my, fictionalized version of it. So that's a great point, that if it's personalized, it just means so much more that you're the only person who can tell the story, and
Yeah.
no one's going to know it any better.
Yeah. I would piggyback on that and say that sometimes what I do, because I do write things for sheer entertainment value,
Yeah, of
shameless, just like
course.
the script that we're working on, I was just writing it for fun.
Yeah,
And then when I put a deck together, what I do is I look for, so where is the personal connection? Because it's
interesting.
in there.
Right,
And
interesting.
I was like, oh, I'm writing about some aspect of my relationship with my
Right,
mother. And then
right.
I lean into it.
Yeah, it's great, great.
But it's often after the fact that I step back and find where the personal connection is. And I would also add that it's okay for your personal connection to be like, I'm obsessed with car chases. It's like
Yeah, sure.
it's been my lifelong love, and I go to sleep imagining really unique ways to create a car crash, and
Yeah,
that's what's yeah.
yep, yep,
It doesn't
absolutely.
have to be some heart-wrenching, like I'm telling my life story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love not being a writer. I love your added part about that. Sometimes it comes after the fact. Write the script first. I never thought of that, but write
And
the
then you
script first, and
realize where it
then
came from.
exactly, I was working this out, and again, absolutely, it doesn't have to be a dark, deep in your soul. It doesn't have to be your childhood trauma you're working out. It could be, yeah, exactly. I love cars all my life. I've loved car chases, so I came up with the Fast and the Furious.
Yes,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Again, $20 million later, we should
And
all
one
be.
of my highlights of my adult life is hanging out with my friends in diners. And there are diners, hanging out in diners in my script. It's like
Right.
the personal stuff ends up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a second question
Uh,
for you. And this is more like pet peeve.
Yes.
As a writer director who pitches,
Yeah.
this is what I get asked a lot, and it drives me bananas,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I'm
think I
curious.
have to figure out how to just deal with it.
Yeah.
Um, so people say, why you? Okay, I know how to answer that. But then people want to know, why now? Why does this have to happen now? And the reason it's my pet peeve is because nothing you pitch is going to get produced right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Best case scenario, it's like years from now, and so why now? Like right now, when we're having this, chat, there's like the elections and everybody's talking about it. Well, if I write about the elections that are happening now, 5 years from now, and so I always try to figure out as a writer, direct, like it's an answer I always make up because I
Yeah.
know it's irrelevant.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you have a thought about that.
Unfortunately, I agree with everything you just said. I can't stand the why now question. I think it's completely irrelevant.
See, this is why
My,
we're working together, Nicholas.
I, I'm going to be really cynical for a minute. I believe that why now is a total bullshit um, question that sort of just came up and traveled the ranks, and it's made executives feel thoughtful. One hand, it makes them sort of feel false. Oh, I'm, asking, I'm really penetrating, what the point of this is and asking thoughtful questions. But also, I think everybody wants an out. Everybody's looking for an excuse to say, no, here's the sad fact of the business is,
Mm.
as I said earlier, there's so much material out there. that what agents and executives often want is an easy reason to say no. It's quite unfortunate, but it's, well, why won't this work? And they're kind of looking for that to get out. So I think the why now is often a reason. They want a reason to say, well, it's not very timely. So I think it's an utterly useless question because
Thank you for
yeah,
validating what I've felt for years.
it drives me nuts. But to your point, you still got to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So it's the one, again, I can say very, very cynical. Everything I've said thus far, I really believe in, I think is important, I think you should know. That's the one question I would say, invent an answer that at least feels like it has,
That's
exactly.
what I've been doing.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks for the
yeah,
validation. I have
yeah,
this comedy that's like a women empowerment story. And when people say, why now? I'm like, are you kidding me?
yeah,
I
right.
mean, it would have been relevant 100 years ago, and sadly will probably be relevant in 100 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why now. Anyway,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's a bullshit question and it
cynicism,
deserves a bullshit answer that sounds believable.
I agree. And this won't work for every story idea, but the one you just said is cynicism side is probably the best one is it's timeless. Why now? This is a timeless story. Again, I'll go lighter. It's a why now a rom-com? People are always going to fall in love. People are always falling in love. The Romeo and Juliet, two
Yeah.
opposites, but they fall in love. That's a
Mhm.
forever thing. So sometimes it's timeless. That may be the right answer, but
That's
sometimes
going to
you
be my
got
answer forevermore. Yeah,
exactly.
it
Yeah.
is one I've used. Yeah. So, any last things about the
Yes.
full pitch before we go to the elevator pitch?
Yeah. Yeah.
Quick word to invite you to check out my course, Exposure 10x, on the topic of pitching and publicity. You'll find a link to it below this video. In this course, I go over what you need to know about pitching and publicity, choosing titles, taglines, loglines, what's the difference between those, synopses, how to write a really great one of different lengths, how to write a great creative statement, how to write powerful bios, regardless of your experience, how to create lookbooks, pitch decks, show Bibles, what the heck is a show Bible and what goes into it, how to create powerful crowdfunding videos, posters, trailers, press kits, and so much more, but without the overwhelm. I'm going to talk about what of these you need, depending on the type of project you're working on and the stage that it's at. So you'll be able to skip around and focus only on those sections that are relevant to you at any given time, whether you're pitching a show to Netflix or you're sending a text message to your cousin to get her to cook lunches for your crew on a short film, and everything in between. No matter the size of the project, attracting collaborators requires pitching. The good news, anyone can learn to pitch well. Link to Exposure 10x, my course on pitching and publicity, is below this video. If you choose to enroll, you'll have lifetime on-demand access to it. And now back to me and producer Nicholas Tabarrok about the formal industry in-person pitch.
Yeah. So here's what I see done wrong about 100% of the time. And I don't even mean that with hyperbole. Almost every time you want people to be engaged, you want people to ask questions, but when they ask a question, just answer that question they've asked. For some reason, I don't know if it's nervousness or anxiousness or a need to fill empty space. Every pitch I've been in, the executive, I'll just use the generic term executive, but the executive says, oh, well, again, I'm inventing things as an example. You're pitching Breaking Bad. Well, why is it set in Albuquerque, New Mexico? My hunch is, I have no idea. My hunch is that Vince Gilligan did that very deliberately. It probably is a meth issue or close to the border. There's probably a reason why that was done.
Mm-hmm.
Why set in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Well, because it's very close to the border, and there's a whatever the case may be. There's a meth problem there. Tell an answer and end it. But what happens every time is, I don't know, it's nerves or something, and they go, and then did you know that? And then this huge long answer, and you go off on a tangent, and you're way off the question that was asked. Stay on point.
I've lived in
Listen.
Chicago for a while, but my parents are from England. And then
Exactly.
when I was traveling to, yeah.
Exactly. I got a flat tire in Mexico. Let me tell you something. La, 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 la. So just listen carefully, take a beat, like don't rush into it. The other thing is people that kind of feel they got to jump in real fast. So like take a beat, think about what the question is, and then answer just that question that was asked and nothing more. Yeah.
Good.
So
Good.
yes, I think that it quite rambling, forgive me for rambling,
Not at all.
but
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the sit down 20-minute, here's an audience for your pitch. That's sort of the big lessons I can think of. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna add one thing from my experience, and then let's talk about the elevator pitch,
Yeah.
which I dread and hate, and I need to get good at it. Um, the thing to remember from my experience is that you're not just pitching your project, you're also pitching yourself as a person to work with. And like smiling doesn't hurt.
Right.
To your point about being brief and answers and answering the question and not rambling and really paying attention to how is the person doing, reading their body language. Are they looking engaged?
Right.
Are they looking bored? In which case you
Yeah.
should probably swerve and try another angle, or I was once at a pitch expo, and I shared this story with my students often. I was talking to someone at Robert De Niro's company,
Oh, yeah.
and I could tell that she's been hearing pitches all day. It was like towards the end of the day. So I come in and I sit down and I say, "Oh, you look really tired. We're working you hard, aren't we?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it became about her and not about what I'm there for
Brilliant.
my
Perfect.
purposes. And then I just listened to her for a while.
Yeah.
And the entire pitch was me just connecting with her. And at
Great.
the end of that pitch, she asked to read my script. Nicholas, I didn't say a word about my
Yeah. It's
project.
good. Fantastic. Love it.
It was
Great.
just a relationship. And she's like, okay, this is
Great.
somebody who I would enjoy talking to.
That's great. It's a
So
fantastic story and a really good point behind it. Yeah. It's
the,
a human being thing. The chemistry is invaluable.
yeah, this is like the soft skills of you
Yeah.
want to present as a good listener and not just a talker. Yes, you're presenting your story, but you're there to notice who's in the room and get to know them.
Yeah.
And if you put all the focus on yourself, you actually become more nervous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
takes the nerves down when you're paying attention to who you're in the room with.
It's a great point. I'll tell true story, but the comedic version of how not to do it. Myself and two writers came up with a TV series, and we were pitching it around town, and at this a major studio that really could have been a great help to us. And we come into the room, we sit at the boardroom table, we're about to start the pitch, and then one of the writers, where do I validate my parking? I'm like, he started the pitch asking, like, and it sounds like a moment from Entourage, but this is a true story. The other writer and I did one of these, and we went, what? Like, he started the pitch worried and concerned about his $10 that he wouldn't have to spend his own money on the parking. What do I get and oh my God, that's just, you're setting it off all in the wrong tone. Yeah. So that was the
Okay, that's a
opposite of
scene
your
to write
version,
in a
where
script. Yeah.
make it human, make it comfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you are pitching yourself that you're an enjoyable person to work with and not just a
Absolutely.
particular project. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're you're not one way that I heard it put is you're not hunting, you're gathering, like you're planting
Oh, yeah.
seeds.
Interesting.
You
Yeah.
want them to invite you back to another pitch. The relationship is more important than the hunt of this particular project.
And another great point, I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't speak to it at all, is 99% of pitches are going to end up in no's. Nothing to do with your material, nothing to do with how talented or good you are. It's just, again, the amount of volume versus what can be made. So of course, what you want out of a pitch is a yes. The second best thing is I can pitch them again, that they're going to invite me back the next time. That's really, really important, that you leave the pitch thinking, even if they don't buy it, I feel like the next time we have a TV series to take to them or a film to take to them, they'll be willing to hear it.
Love
Yeah,
it.
great point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think this was really comprehensive. Um, let's shift gears
Yes.
and just in broad strokes,
Yeah.
you have a minute or less
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
someone you want to be able
Exactly.
to pitch to again.
Exactly. So this is quite a bit different, obviously, because you're not going to have the 20 minutes, and da, 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 da. I'd say the most important thing about what we'll call the elevator pitch is know your audience. So when it's an appointment pitch, when you sort of booked it in advance, presumably enough understanding has happened that yes, you are pitching to the right people. But when you're in an elevator at a cocktail party, brief moment, don't waste the person's time and your own time pitching something that it's not even what they do. So here's an example. Yeah, I jokingly referred to, Fast and the Furious. Massive franchise, huge success, made billions of dollars. So you think, wow, who doesn't want to make Fast and Furious? I'll tell you who doesn't, A24. Amazing company, would love to be in business with them. They're doing great things, but they're not in the business of a massive, huge action franchise. So you have a moment to meet an A24 executive. Don't pitch them. My show is just like Fast and Furious. It's about car races all around the world. It's not what they do. It's not what they want. There's no good and bad here. I'm not saying it's not good enough for them or it's too bad for them. I'm just saying it isn't the right mix. Flipping it, you have a meeting with Warner Brothers. Don't pitch them poor things. Don't say this is it's a weird, idiosyncratic story, and it's Willem Dafoe with scars on his face. Warner Brothers doesn't make those movies. So
Right.
if you do have a minute or 2 minutes within recipient, executive, whatever we're going to call them, make sure that you're taking the right material, right? So that's the most important thing. The second thing then is, what I said earlier about sort of hitting every beat of the story, you're not going to have time for that. So really it's what kind of movie it is. So in that instance, don't worry about beginning, middle, end. That's when you can do not a cheesy cliffhanger, like I said in the example that happened to me. You got to read it to find out. Not that, but don't expect to cover the story. It's a story about. I keep going to rom-com because it's an easy one to encapsulate in a short sentence. It's a story about two complete opposites from different cultures that meet and, despite their misgivings, fall in love.
Boom.
You get it, boom. So I don't need to know that Dave's from Nigeria and Sally is from an Orthodox Jewish family and they meet in Chicago. That doesn't matter. Two complete opposites, but they fall in love, and how are the families going to deal with it? I get it, So
a chemistry teacher and family man cooks meth to pay for medical bills.
Exactly. That's it. Totally. Yeah. So tell it briefly, and to what you said a minute ago, be personable. And I think this is great for your company. Can I send it to you? Just not forceful. Oh, here's the thing that applies to pitches across the board. And again, it's a tricky double-edged sword you have to get right. On the one hand, pitches aren't charity. Pitches aren't, a guy in the street with his hat out. You're not asking them to help you. You're not asking them, this is good for them. Like, you're pitching them because if you make my movie, it's going to make money for your company. If you greenlight my TV series, you're going to win Emmys. So the pitch is never, oh, please, sir, some more soup. You're not going in and asking for charity. But at the same time, and I've had it both ways, you're not arrogant about it. Oh, you're going to make a lot of money on this. You'd be crazy to pass this up. Like, you've got to feel like you have to acknowledge that you need something from them in order to go forward, yet it is good for them. It's not a one-way street. That when you're pitching, we will both benefit from this, but don't lean too heavily onto you're crazy to pass on this, or you're gonna make a ton of money, or if you do this, it's really good for you. Don't make it feel like you're doing them a favor. That's the way I should have put it. You're not asking for charity, but you're also not doing them a favor. You got to find that middle ground where I'm pitching this to you, and we're both going to do well out of this. And we had pitches in 109 billion, and I felt super confident in saying to those people, yeah, it'd be fantastic to have your support. We would like your support and financing and so forth, but this will be good for you guys. Like, this is a good movie for you and you'll do well off it. I really can go in there and feel that's very true. And you have to have that. If you feel like it's a one-way street, they're helping you, then you shouldn't be pitching them your project in the first place.
That's a great point. Yeah. I want to say a couple of things about the quick pitch is, first of all, full disclosure here. I would never, I never have, and I don't think I would do an elevator pitch, an actual elevator pitch, because if I have 1 or 2 minutes with someone who could actually be instrumental, I would spend those 1 or 2 minutes getting to know them and listening to them and making a relationship, not pitching a project to them.
Yeah,
The context where I've had to do short pitches is like a pitch expo.
yeah,
You're treated like a meat market.
yeah.
It's like speed dating, and you have a
Speed
couple of
dating.
minutes with each person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I want to say about that, the formal, 2-minute pitch is, I'm looking at my notes here from listening to you. The genre feel, I think you could put that in there. And then you have just like a minute for the story. In my experience, if you need to sum up a story in just like a sentence or two, focus on what the character wants.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like the pitching the rom-com, they want each other.
yeah,
What does the character want? What's the obstacle? This chemistry teacher needs to pay, medical bills.
yeah.
The obstacle is he's now a drug dealer.
Exactly. You're
Um,
doing it illegally. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So that's been my my tip to my students when you have to pitch a story. Like, it's not, well, we're in the magical land of Oz. It's like, oh, this girl is stuck in this magical land and needs to get home.
Yeah, yeah,
So we know
yeah.
what the character wants, and it feels like a story even when you deliver it in a sentence or two.
Fantastic. I agree with everything you said, and I'm basically going to repeat what you just said, but you said something really important, so I think it bears repetition or reiteration, is if it's truly the elevator pitch, and the elevator is a bit of a wrong metaphor, but because that's kind of unlikely. But what does happen pretty frequently is you go to film festival and you're at an event or even in line or you're mingling in the lobby afterwards. And what did you think of the movie? Oh yeah, what do you do? Oh, I'm an executive at A24. Oh, you're not. So that's not infrequent like that. If you're in the business and you're attending events, actually bumping into someone, oh, an agent, I represented the star of the movie. That is not infrequent. So you should be prepared for that.
Hmm.
And I'm really glad you said what you said, because what you really want to do in that moment is not pitch, but have them be open to a pitch later down the road. So if I were to be at that cocktail party, what do you do? I'm at A24, we're distributing this movie. Oh, great. I love them. I love what you guys do. I'm working on something that actually feels, the writer and director and I always felt like A24 is the perfect home for it. Could I get your email and send you a little bit about it? Don't pitch them in that moment. Just rather, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm an agent. I represent that actor. Oh, man, I'm a huge fan. I love his work. I'm working on a feature that the director, he's our first choice. We would love him to be in a movie. I don't want to bother you with it now, but can I get your email so I can tell you a little bit about it later? That's the perfect way to deal with that bump into encountered in the moment thing. Don't give them they don't want to hear a story at that moment. But if you have a nice impression, by the way, I'm going to the bar, can I get you a drink? Even better. I see you're finished your red wine. Would you like another one? Even better.
Good, good. Yeah. Um, okay. Well, thank you for these really great tips. And we let me see. Yeah, I think we'll close here. And I've some of my students will get to meet you live
I'm looking forward to it.
on
It'll be
Zoom
fun.
and practice some of this, put this to
Right.
practice. Thank you for being so generous towards me and our community, and for all the great work that you do.
Well, you're very kind. Hopefully it's helpful. I look forward to the next step, meeting some of your students and hearing some pitches. And I hope something I said is helpful to them.
All right. Thanks, Nicholas.
You're welcome.
Quick reminder that Exposure 10X, my course on pitching and publicity, is available on my website. You can find a link to it below this video. Thank you for joining us here, and thank you for your creative work and for the courage that you find to pitch it and make others aware of the gifts that you have in store for us. Thank you for pitching.